another interesting literature class. My name is Precious Balogun. Our theme for today is General Introduction to Drama, and our topic is Plot, Part 1. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to define plots, and finally, you should be able to list and explain the elements of a plot. Every story is made up of series of events, and this series of events are written in a sequential order. When we say sequential order, we say a step-by-step order or a format. So every author writes their story in a format. Some can decide to start from the beginning, others can start from the middle, while others also start from the end. Now, the author gives us a progression of the storyline of a particular play. Now, let's see what a plot is. Plot is a literary term. Plot can be defined as the arrangement of events in a play. It's the order of events. The author takes us through the progression of the storyline, how the story begins, where it gets to, and finally how it ends. So we have the beginning, we have the middle, and also the end. And we can't successfully talk about plot without making mention of conflict. So what is conflict? Conflict is essential to any plot of a story. So, conflict can be defined as the obstacles, the challenges that a main character or any character faces during a play. This conflict can either be internal or external. When we talk about internal conflict, we're talking about the conflict that happens in the mind of a character, which is man versus self. Now, when we also talk about external conflict, we talk about conflict that happens outside of a character, which we have man versus man, man versus nature, man versus society. Now, let's look at this type of conflict in detail. Man versus self conflict. Man versus self conflict is an internal struggle. The character struggles with himself. The character struggles with making of choices, he also struggles with fears, doubts, and so on. Next, we have man versus society conflict. Man versus society conflict is an external conflict, a conflict between man and his society. Man struggles with the norms of the society, with the beliefs and the laws of the society. So man tries as much as possible to go against these norms and rules to achieve his goal. Now let's look at another kind of external conflict. Man versus man conflict. Man versus man conflict is an external conflict, a conflict between two characters, a clash of interest when one character goes against a man versus man conflict is another external conflict, a clash of interest between one character and another character. These characters have either a physical fight or an Man versus man conflict is an external conflict, a conflict between two characters. It can be a clash of interest, it can be a physical fight between friends, between enemies, and man versus man conflict is an external conflict, a conflict between two characters, a man versus another man. This can be a clash of interest. We can see this between the protagonist and the antagonist. For example, in William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, we see a conflict between two families, the Capulet family and the Montague family. These families were enemies almost throughout the play. Now let's see another kind of external conflict. Man versus nature conflict. Man versus nature conflict is an external conflict, a conflict between man and nature. When we say nature, we refer to climate, weather, or even animals. For example, in the book The Old Man and the Medal, there was a conflict between the main character, the old man, and a fish called Merlin. Now, let's see the elements of a plot. There are 7 elements of a plot, namely exposition or introduction, inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, denouement, and resolution. From this diagram, we can see the progression of the story, where we have the introduction to the inciting incident and straight to the climax, which is the peak of the plot, and then the falling action, which brings us to the end of a particular play. Now, let's take a look at these elements one by one. Exposition is also known as introduction. This is the beginning of a play, where the author introduces the characters to us. He gives us an added information about the character, describes the character and the behavior of the character. Now, let's see the next element. The inciting incident is also known as a complication. These are actions that lead us to the conflict of the play. Now, let's see the next one. Rising action is the action that leads us to the climax of a story. When I say climax, I mean the peak of the story. Here, the author introduces actions that intensify the conflict in the play, thereby increasing the excitement and tension in the mind of the reader or audience. Now, let's see the next element. Climax is a turning point of a play. This is where all the actions build up and get to the highest peak. Here, the author creates suspense in the minds of the readers and the audience. Falling actions are actions that lead to the end of a play. These are activities that lead to the resolution of a conflict. Resolution is a conclusion of a plot in a play. This is where the author satisfies the curiosity in the minds of the audience, thereby resolving the conflict in a play. Denouement is the last element of a plot. It is a French word which means action of untying. Here, the author answers questions that were not answered during the resolution of the conflict, and the story ends either on a happy note or on a sad note. Now we have come to the end of today's lesson, but before we go, let's take a quick summary of what we've learned so far. We have learned that plot is a literary term that describes series of events that make up a play. And we've also learned that there are 7 basic elements of a plot, namely introduction, inciting action, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, and denouement. Before we go, let's test ourselves on the following questions. Question 1. Which of the following best describes a plot? A. The foreshadowing in a play. B. A series of events that make up a play. C. It is a story within a story in a play. D. It is the hint of an event in a play. And the correct answer is B. A series of events that make up a play. Question 2. Which of the following is not an element of a plot? A. Climax. B. Flashback. C. Denouement. D. Exposition. And the correct answer is B. Flashback. Now we have come to the end of today's class. I believe by now you know what plot is, and you can now list and explain the 7 elements of plots. See you in our next class. Bye.